Hi everyone. I wanted to do sort of a little wrap-up video for the director series that I've done. I really didn't do any sort of closing episodes for any of them this year anyway. So I wanted to do that and just sort of sum up some of the ones I've talked about. I've got a total of 9 director series on my channel right now, 6 of which I did just this year. I was planning to make an independent movie with my brother this fall, but our producer sort of backed out, and neither of us really has the time to sort of run a production, outside of our jobs that we work. So that didn't end up happening. So I was a little bummed about that. So I decided to fill my time and make the weeks pass quickly by going through like 4 different directors and rewatching all or most of their films just to sort of keep busy. And it worked because the weeks just kind of flew by, and now it's practically the end of the year. The previous ones that I did were for David Fincher, Martin Scorsese, and Steven Soderbergh. So I wanted to just, obviously you could go back and, look at all those playlists. They're there on my channel, but that's hours and hours of, of me talking about movies. So I wanted to do a little sort of wrap-up instead and sort of summarize some of the best stuff that each of these guys have done. David Fincher, I started on that series in fall of 2010 with Victoria, who used to be on YouTube but isn't anymore. My 3 favorite David Fincher movies are Fight Club, Zodiac, and my very favorite, of course, is Seven, which is a movie I'll adore for my whole life. I also wanted to sort of highlight a particular scene that really sort of stands out to me, and that would be, for me, basically the entire end of Seven, beginning with the car ride where Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt are transporting Kevin Spacey, the serial killer, to where Spacey says the last 2 bodies are hidden. And everything that takes place after that is just, one of the most intense experiences. There are lots of great scenes in the movie, and in other David Fincher films as well. But that one really sort of stands out to me as being, a big one. Then I went on to do Martin Scorsese, again with Victoria. Unfortunately, all her videos are gone now, but mine are still up. My 3 favorite Scorsese films are Cape Fear, which is a remake. It has Robert De Niro and Nick Nolte in it. After Hours, which is a comedy from '85. Griffin Dunne and Catherine O'Hara and Roseanne Arquette are some of the main characters. Linda Fiorentino is in it as well. And my favorite of all of Scorsese movies is, of course, the gangster film from 1990, Goodfellas, with Ray Liotta playing Henry Hill, and Paul Sorvino, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Lauren Bracco playing Ray Liotta's wife. Just a fantastic movie, probably my favorite movie of all time, the best movie I've ever seen in my life. And my favorite sequence out of a Scorsese film would probably be, there's lots and lots of good ones again here, but the one that really stands out for me as sort of epitomizing just how awesome Scorsese is what I call the babysitter day, and that's towards the end of Goodfellas. Ray Liotta is preparing for his babysitter, so-called, to transport a packet of cocaine which he's selling. She's going to slip it into the nursing bag, basically, with all the other baby stuff, and take a plane ride to another city where it's going to be sold. But during the course of that day, he's got tons of other stuff to do, so he's just back and forth everywhere, all over the place, and it's a really, really great sequence. The music's great, the editing is fantastic. And it gets to be pretty intense after a while. It's good. And it's a good comic scene as well. In 2011, I did a series on Steven Soderbergh. Contagion had come out around that time, so I decided to go through all his movies. My favorites are The Limey, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which was his first feature film, and Out of Sight, which is my favorite. That's with George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez, of course. And my favorite scene out of Soderbergh's resume is from that movie. It's a scene where George Clooney finds Jennifer Lopez at a bar, and they have a conversation, and then there are quick flash forwards. Instead of flashbacks, you have flash forwards to them in her hotel room a little bit later on in the evening. The music and the editing are just fantastic, and this is just one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever. It's terrific. So I started off this year getting ready for The Avengers, which came out in May, by doing a whole series on Joss Whedon. He's only done 2 feature films, directed them anyway. He's written a bunch of others. So I decided to focus on my 3 favorite episodes of his television show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. They would be Hush from season 4, in which all the main characters lose their voice. and have to figure out a way to get them back and also stop the bad guys. My second favorite would be a two-part series from the beginning of season 6 called Bargaining, in which the gang, Buffy, actually got killed at the end of season 5, and so they're working on putting a spell together that will actually bring her back to life. That's a really terrific episode, and it's like 2 hours. And my favorite episode of the whole series is from season 5, which is called The Body. I'm not going to say too much about that episode if you're planning on watching it. If you're planning on watching the series and aren't familiar with exactly what happens there. But it's just, you know, one of the most fantastic things I've ever seen. And I would say my favorite favorite scene from all of Joss Whedon's work is probably that whole episode. But I wanted to actually single out a different episode from season 7, which is called Conversations with Dead People. The episode is split between like 4 different places, and each character in that area is communicating with someone who has apparently died. The ending of that episode, basically, there's a huge amount of surprise revelations that all sort of come at once. 4 or 5 different locations and 4 or 5 different characters having talks with these ghosts or zombies or vampires or whatever it is they are, and suddenly the revelations, the surprises come bam, 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 one after the other. It's a masterpiece of cross-cutting between all the different locations. Terrific, terrific episode. Then over the summer, of course, The Dark Knight Rises was coming out, which was kind of disappointing when I saw it. But Christopher Nolan, of course, I'm a big fan of his. My 3 favorite films of his are The Prestige, Inception, and my favorite being Batman Begins. And I had a tough time picking a favorite scene from Nolan. There are so many scenes in Batman Begins that I like, but I ended up going with the climax of Inception, where all the dream sequences sort of collapse one right after the other. It was building towards that for a really long time when it happened. I was just elated. It worked great. Plus, I got to see that movie in IMAX, and it was just spectacular. So Christopher Nolan, he is a winner, even if he occasionally disappoints in a big way. Then I moved on to Paul Thomas Anderson, who had The Master coming out in September. I wasn't crazy about that movie, but I've only seen it the one time, so maybe I'll like it more in subsequent viewings. My favorite films by him are Punch Drunk Love, Hard 8, which was his first feature film, and my favorite is There Will Be Blood, of course, with Daniel Day-Lewis as Daniel Plainview. But my favorite sequence from any Paul Thomas Anderson movie would be the opening of Magnolia, which has Ricky Jay narrating a series of stories that have these incredible coincidences take place in them. There's a number of scenes I really like a lot. The Rain of Frogs is good. The musical number is good in Magnolia. I don't feel it's overall the strongest picture. You know, there are a couple others I like more than that, but that opening scene right there is really great. Then Robert Zemeckis, of course, had Flight, which came out in November. My 3 favorite films by him are Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Forrest Gump, and of course my favorite Back to the Future, which I saw when I was 12 and had a big, big impact on me then. My favorite scene from any Robert Zemeckis movie is the sequence where Forrest starts running. You know, I like the running scene is really a lot of fun, but the scene that takes place before that is really kind of interesting because when I watched the film, I had no idea what was about to happen. He had been through all this stuff. He'd gone to Vietnam. He'd gotten awards. He'd become famous and what have you, and wealthy, I think, as well at that point. But when Jenny comes back and they have their little sort of, really nice few weeks or months together that they're always hanging out and everything like that, but then he proposes marriage to her and she turns him down, and the next day she's gone. She wakes up early and she gets a cab and she just leaves. And he's sort of wandering around the house that morning after he wakes up looking for her, and she's gone, and she's left his medal, which he gave to her years ago. And he's sitting there, and I just had no idea what was going to happen next, you know. Anything was possible at that point. The film was just following no pattern at all. And then he gets up and he starts running, and then the narration begins again, and he talks about running across the country and then back again and then back the other way over and over again, which was just so unusual. I've never seen anything like it. So yeah, that would be my favorite scene out of a Zemeckis film. Then I went back to look at the films of David Lynch, each of which I'd already seen, but wanted to rewatch them again and just sort of see if I could understand them better. My 3 favorite films by him are The Straight Story, which I liked quite a bit more this time, because I was more inclined to like that type of film, I guess. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, which has some problems, but overall I just really, really like a lot of it. There's so much fun stuff happening in this movie, so much crazy stuff. All the actors are really great in it. Well, for the most part anyway. And my favorite film of his, I feel the strongest, most solid film of his is Lost Highway. I feel I should give an honorable mention to Eraserhead, because I like that movie a lot more, and I feel it's pretty solid as well. But overall, I'd have to say Lost Highway was his best picture. My favorite sequence from a David Lynch movie is, no question about it, from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. And that's the scene where the David Bowie character, Agent Philip Jeffries, shows up at the Philadelphia FBI office. And suddenly the movie just goes barking mad. You know, all kinds of just crazy images and sounds and bits of dialogue here and there that don't make any sense, and backwards talking and music, and you know, it's just nuts. The whole movie just goes completely insane at that point and eventually calms down once he disappears. Watch that scene a bunch of times trying to figure out what's happening, but mostly I just enjoy it just for what it is, you know. Who knows what's going on in here, but it's really great. So that's David Lynch. And then finally, I just finished up doing Tarantino because Django Unchained just came out, which I liked overall, but have some problems with. Mostly I think it could have been cut down a little bit more. It's way too long. My three favorite films by Tarantino, I was really struggling whether to give the number 3 spot to either Jackie Brown or Pulp Fiction. But really, Pulp Fiction has so much to love about it, you know, and I love Jackie Brown, it's terrific, but Pulp Fiction just edges it out, I'd say. Although Samuel Jackson is great, not only that one, and in Django Unchained, you know, but Pulp Fiction as well. I mean, he's great in all 3 of those movies. He's in, I think there's only 2 movies that he's not in of Tarantino's, Reservoir Dogs and Death Proof. He's even in Kill Bill Volume 1 as a dead body, and he has like 2 lines in Volume 2. And he has voiceover in Inglourious Bastards, you know? If Tarantino can, he'll work Samuel Jackson in there somewhere, and good on him for that. So my 3 favorites are Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill Volume 1, which is just, you know, just outrageously fun, and Reservoir Dogs is my favorite of all, which is just such a masterpiece, man. Unbelievable what that guy did on his first movie. And my favorite scene from any Tarantino movie is from Reservoir Dogs, and it's called The Commode Story. And there's a character, I won't tell you who, a character amongst the jewel thieves who is actually an undercover cop. And to prepare to be an undercover cop, he has to have a backstory. He has to have a history of a criminal, which is entirely invented. So he practices telling the commode story. And in the sequence, you see him in his apartment alone, looking over the pages that have been written up, trying to get the details right, trying to remember how the story goes. And then you see him later on continuing to tell the story, but at this point, he's practicing it for the guy who's coaching him. And he's having a good time telling the story and really getting the details down. And then the scene switches to him telling the story as it goes along. But this time, to the guys, he's fooling into thinking that he's a criminal. And they're sitting in a bar. Actually, all the guys that are listening to him are sitting down, but he's standing up like he's doing a comedy routine. And then the scene changes again. The story keeps progressing with each scene. But as he tells it, at this point, suddenly the scene becomes dramatized. Just like any other scene in the movie, you see it play out before you. So he's continuing to tell the story, but at this point you see it happening, and then there's an incidental character within the dramatization that starts telling a story of his own. He starts telling his own story. And what's funny is, you're supposed to take his story as real, because unlike Tim Roth, he's not playing a character, he's just telling about something that happened to him. But since the entire story is made up to begin with, this guy's story is just as phony as anything else in the whole story. It's an ingenious sequence, you know, and this is in his first movie, and man, it's one of those things like in Forrest Gump. I'd never seen anything like it before. And it's just crazy, insane, and crazy good. And Tarantino is like one of my top 5. In fact, you know, most of these guys are in my top 5 directors. Soderbergh, Tarantino, Fincher and Scorsese, and maybe Spielberg as well would probably be number 5, although I haven't done a series on him. He's got a ton of movies. That would take forever to do a series on him. Anyway, I'm going to be taking a break in 2013 from the director series. I'm going to be doing a couple of series, but they're going to be a lot different. I'm not going to be focusing on a particular director. I am going to be, of course, doing a weekly review on Thursday for the Movie Reviewers 100. I've got a link to that channel. If you haven't subscribed already, we do themes every week. either particular actor, director, genre, something, which everybody posts videos related to that topic in one way or another. So I do the videos on Thursday, and I'll be continuing to do that next year as well. The other series that I'm going to be doing for my personal channel, as it happens, in April I'm going to be turning 40 years old. So I've decided to take a look back at 1973, the year I was born, and pick a bunch of movies to talk about from that year, because I don't really watch a lot of movies from that era. Most of the movies that I'm most familiar with are from the 80s, 90s, you know, in this last decade, and of course the ones that are coming out these days. Yeah, I haven't really gone back and explored the 70s all that much, or for that matter, a lot of previous decades. So I've decided, why not focus on 1973, look them up on IMDb, see what movies came out that year, and, you know, just check them out and see what I think of them. So I'm going to be doing a video maybe once a week or 2 weeks, I'm not really sure. But I'm not going to have this, you know, every 2 or 3 days schedule. That's pretty intense, you know. So I'm going to be taking it a little bit easier, but I'm going to be doing that basically throughout the year, or as long as I feel like it, I guess. I'm not really sure. But there's tons of movies to see. As long as they're available to watch on disc, I'll take a look at them. Or maybe I'll be able to find them on Turner Classic Movies or some other cable channel. I'll be doing one other series on my personal channel besides that. But that's going to be a surprise, and it's not going to be a review series. It's going to be something a little bit different. So I'll talk about that later. In any case, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. And thanks again to everybody who comments and makes video responses to the videos that I do. Really appreciate it. Like to have all your feedback. Even though we don't agree a lot of the times on some of the films, some of the ones I hate you really like, some of the ones I really like you hate. Death Proof comes to mind. Maybe not hate is a strong word for Death Proof, but I tend to like it more than most people, it seems. Anyway, thank you again for watching. Appreciate it. And I'll see you again real soon. Oh! I'm also going to do a best of year video, best movies of 2012, and a video on the stuff I'm looking forward to in 2013, which isn't a lot at this point, but hey, there's a few ones out there. Always something I'm looking forward to. Thanks again, guys. Take it easy. See you soon.